Hello friends. Today we're going to be looking at an important skill when we use colored pencils. And we want to look at different ways of shading and coloring and where it makes sense to do that. So the first thing I want to show you is just flat shading. Now, flat shading is when you are just trying to cover an object or fill in an object with just the same color. It's not really trying to be detailed. It's more like color by number. You're just filling in a section with a color. Okay. Now, with flat shading, it's not always useful. And flat shading is good when you're just trying to do a design. You're filling in bubble letters or doing something simple. It's not as useful when you want your work to be of a realistic scene or object. Okay. So that's flat shading. It's just mostly the same color across an area or section. Okay. And sometimes you can spruce up flat shading by just adding a little bit of a darker outline like that. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to look at really full shading, full color, and seeing what that looks like. Okay. Now we're going to do that with our colored pencils. And instead of using just two colored pencils like we did for the flat shading, we're going to add some other colors in there. Okay, we have some warm colors for the brighter sections, and we do have some cool colors for the shadows. So let's start. And we're going to start similarly to the flat shading. We're going to take our main color that we have on there, this nice red. I'm going to start to shade in the sections where we want it to be red. So I'm going to layer on some of that to start. Okay. Now, big difference with a lot of pictures that use colored pencils to make a more realistic image is they're using multiple colors and they're blending and layering. Because you can actually layer colors on top of each other with colored pencils. Not exactly like paint, but similar, because you can actually do a little bit of a blend in there, and that gives you a richer, fuller tone to your colors. Okay, so we're going to start with some of these lighter sections of this apple, and I'm just going to use that flat shading to fill in some of the sections to start, like that. Okay, now in this one we're going to have the light coming from the left and our darker areas on the right. So we're going to stop there for a second. We're going to add a cool color. We're going to actually add a bit of blue on top of that reddish color. Start the lay down where the shadow is going to go and get some of the nice texture in that apple. Especially down here where you've got this little bump on the apple. It's going to be quite a bit darker than the rest of it. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some brown on top of that blue to really layer on that color and make it a nice warm shadow because it has some browns in it. So a little bit like that. Okay, that gives us the darker side of the apple with a lot more texture than we had in our flat shading. Now we want to go into the lighter section. On the lighter section, I'm going to start by adding a little bit light yellow along the top ridge of that apple and a little bit around the edge where the shadow is going to hit the light section. Okay, and just for some texture in the apple, I'm going to give a little bit of yellow and some of those orangey spots as well. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to go back with my red-orange color. I'm going to add a little bit along the edges. And we do have this little spot where the stem goes in, so that's in shadow too. So we're going to layer on some red to start, then add some shadow after. Okay, a little bit around the edge too. Nice color around the edges of the shadow and the white. I add a little bit more on there, like that. We're going to go into the stem. Now, a lot of times the stem is you're going to have a mix of green and brown, depending on how long ago the apple was picked. I actually grow apple trees in my house. I have a little orchard. I got apples, pears, and some other trees as well. All right. Now, we want to add the shadow in here, so we're going to darken up along the ridge right here. And a little bit of blue in there too, so our shadows match along the bottom of the apple. That. I might go back in just a little bit of detail here and there where I want it. A little bit of spotting on there. You see that in a lot of fruit, little spot colors. And there we go. So, as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between just flat shading and full shading. This gives you a more textured look. You can do a lot more with 3D in there. And this gives you a flat kind of designed look. So most of what we're doing in art, we're going to be looking at full shading. So as you move on to any coloring in your projects, this is mostly what we're going to be looking for in our main projects. All right, guys, that's it for now. Happy drawing.